To preface this video, I'd like to say RIP to Wilt Chamberlain and thank you for making the game what it is today. This video is purely jokes. Anyways, let me start this goddamn video. When I first started learning about the NBA, Wilt Chamberlain was this larger than life figure who was kind of like the boogeyman of the NBA. He truly seemed like he was unstoppable, and I'm sure this was the consensus opinion for everyone who saw the type of stuff he did. I mean, averaging 50 points a game for an entire season is straight up insane, not to mention dropping 100 points in a single game. All of this made me think he might just be basketball Jesus. But I'm here to tell you, this man was a straight up fraud when it really comes down to it. In the longest decade where Wilt Chamberlain played, that of course being the 60s, there were 7 other NBA teams when it started, and by the end of it, there were 14. Which led me to believe that surely Wilt Chamberlain was racking up these rings while he had a slim amount of competition. So let's look up how many championships and rings he collected in the 60s. He had 1 ring in the 60s. The one and only ring he had in the 60s was in 1967. And this was the only year he was able to beat Bill Russell, who had a history of straight up owning him throughout his entire career. I will give Will his flowers for this year, as he carried his team to a championship despite him only averaging 22 points in the playoffs this year, but he elevated it where it really mattered and jumped from about 4 assists during his career to 9 assists a game during this playoff run, really elevating his team. Now let's go and see what the rest of the 60s entailed for him. In 1960, he lost in 6 games to Bill Russell, the start of many losses to Bill Russell. In 1961, he had a first round exit and sweep to the Syracuse Nationals. He lost to a team called the Syracuse Nationals. Next year, he lost, again, to the Celtics, with Bill Russell sending adoption papers to 76ers management so they can acknowledge that Wilt is his son. In 1963, Wilt Chamberlain didn't even make the playoffs. This guy was known as the most dominant player of his time, and second in dominance only to Shaq all time, but couldn't even make the playoffs in his prime. If that doesn't scream fraud, I really don't know what does. Like, think about the shit LeBron would get if he didn't make the playoffs at 26. Man, they would be on that ass. No pause. Then in 1964, Wilt gets his get back and actually decides to make the playoffs, making it to the finals, just for Bill Russell to shut that shit up again. This continued in 1965. Bill Russell and the Celtics handed him that ass yet again, and again in 1966. We know what happened in 67. Then in 1968, Wilt knew he had a Mickey Mouse win and decided to pull a KD and jump to one of the greatest teams in the league, with that being the Lakers, in hopes to beat the Celtics yet again. It didn't work as he lost in 6 games in the NBA Finals against his top op for what is like the 70th time in a row at this point. Then, rounding out the 60s, was a better way to cap it off than yet another L against Bill Russell, even with his very own super team. He lost in back-to-back years against the Celtics with this new team. Now let's get into the 70s, but before that, speaking of fraud, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, with that being Atlas VPN. Internet scammers have recently been putting up 60s Wilt Chamberlain stat lines. So what's a better way to protect yourself from this than by encrypting your location from these frauds by using Atlas VPN, who is currently running a limited time summer deal for just $1.83 a month with a 30-day money back guarantee using my link in the description. Atlas VPN works on various devices, from iPhone, Mac, Android, and PC. Personally, I use Atlas VPN to change my location to find the best deals based on location, so I don't fumble the bag like I'm Dennis Schroeder, because over here, we're all about keeping our pay. Another thing it comes in handy for is me checking out other basketball leagues online, knowing I'm always safe with an encrypted location. You can even change your location to watch your favorite shows on Hulu or on Netflix. Like if you want to change your location to Canada to watch Parks and Recreation on Netflix, even though you could just watch Breaking Bad instead because it's 10 times better. Again, the time to check out Atlas VPN is now, as they're offering a limited time summer deal of just $1.83 a month with a 30-day money back guarantee, all to protect your privacy and many other benefits. So check it out with the first link in the description below. Thank you again Atlas VPN for sponsoring the video, and back to Fraud Watch. With Will entering into his old ass age with this God Squad of an organization, in the 70s there was really only one man who could stop him. His kryptonite, if you will. Which of course is Bill Russell and the Celtics. Oh wait, actually the Lakers got beaten 7 by the New York Knicks of all teams, so I don't know. Then they lost the Milwaukee Bucks in 1971 with Kareem emerging, then won a Mickey Mouse trophy where he got carried in his elderly age in 1972, where he only averaged 15 points a game in the playoffs and fell off tremendously. Then, finally, to round out his career, he lost in 1973 to the New York Knicks. Now that we finished his playoff history, we see that he ended his career with 2 rings. Do you know who else ended with 2 rings? Kevin Durant. Do you know who else had to go to a super team to win a ring? I'll tell you. It was Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is also known as a fraud. Now to dissect the insane numbers he had, to also put him on Fraud Watch for this, let's talk about these regular season stats. In the regular season, throughout his career, Will averaged 30 points per game, as to where in the playoffs, he dropped to about 22.5 because the lights were always too bright for him. Will actually inflated the fuck out of all of his stats because he always played 48 minutes every single night, and he also played in the highest paced era in the NBA. I won't even get into the plumber argument because it's hard to quantify, what that is, and what I will say about it is look at some Bob Cousy highlights and let me know how many times he dribbles with his left hand. You know, a player I would compare Wilt Chamberlain to in comparison of stats and his career would probably be James Harden. In his prime, James Harden was putting up ridiculous stat lines just like Wilt Chamberlain, but could never get past the Golden State Warriors, just like Wilt Chamberlain could never get past the Celtics. This led to him being deemed a fraud no matter what he would do. I mean, he was out there averaging 36 points, playing 36 minutes a night. I mean, make him play all 48, and what's stopping him from averaging damn near 50? Today, all people really talk about is recency bias clouding judgment. But what about the exact opposite? I mean, nobody was alive to see this man Wilt Chamberlain play, or anyone else in the 60s. And if they were, they're like 80 years old now, and I doubt they're watching this video, so they can't really contribute to the discourse we're having right here. So because no one was really there to watch him play, this leads to a lot of us just looking at his stats and assuming his career was also unfathomable, when, in totality, his career besides these phenomenal stats is kinda underwhelming. He won one ring where he was the best player on the team, and his other ring was part of a super team where he wasn't even a top 2 player on that team. With 60s ball, we really just look at stats and accomplishments and just ignore every single bit of context there is. Now, the next part of his career I want to talk about is probably the most infamous part of his career, with that of course being his 100-point game. Now, Wilt is one of the greatest athletes ever if what we're told about him is true. Let's not get that twisted. But the thing is, there's so much speculation, we have no idea what's true about his career. There's no footage of him ever scoring 100 points, like not a single second of it. All we have is him holding this sign at the end of the game, which is an iconic NBA photo now. Now, do I personally think that he dropped 100 points in an NBA game? Well, I actually do, because what's stopping him from just having that dog in him and hitting all the free throws that he normally misses for just one night? I mean, everyone has that one night where they're on, and when they're on. Now, even though I do believe it is true, I just find it crazy that one of his biggest and most major accomplishments is one that people can't even solidify. Like, we have no idea if it happened or not, besides a few quote-unquote first-hand sources that we have. Now, the next part of this video is going to talk about the fraudulence Wilt Chamberlain has off of the court. Now, a lot of you might know what I'm referring to when I say that, but if you don't, just take a look at what's on your screen right now. In the book that Wilt Chamberlain wrote, he claimed that he slept with 20,000 women throughout his lifetime up to that point. Now, not only is this dude a fraud, he's a damn liar. Now, I'm no mathematician. In fact, I've always been an English type of fellow, but something here is not adding up. So let's get the math on this. Assuming he started in high school, so let's say he was getting down and dirty at the age of 14, and the time he said this was at 55, that gives us about 41 years he was getting down and dirty. So let's do 41 times 365 being the amount of days in a year. And I'm sorry, Tyrese Halliburton, for not doing all that leap year stuff. That's going to take a lot of extra time. Now, 41 times 365 gives us about 15,000 if you're rounding up. So if you're like me, you're thinking, yeah, something's not adding up here. That means on average, being generous, every night he was thrashing 1.3 women. Now, he says he was a big three-way enjoyer, but I still feel like this number is OD, and is just quite a bit of cap. I mean, you gotta think, he would have got at least one STD by the end of all that, or at least had one kid, because we gotta think here, he has no kids, and according to him, he has no STDs, which something's not adding up here yet again. I mean, Magic Johnson got done way dirtier for way less. Another straight up lie he has in his book is when he talks about how he likes to travel the country and drive across the country. He talks about how you go like 180 in a Volkswagen or something. And I'm just calling straight cap on that. There's no way he doesn't get pulled over going that much on a freeway for that long. And he said he just had to be smart about it. I mean, I'm pretty sure just the concept of going 180 on the freeway, knowing there are officers patrolling, is not being smart. So yeah, there's that. All I know is that Wilt Chamberlain is a freak of nature and just a straight up freak in general. I mean, 20,000 women. Are we being serious? Because I know we're not. There's just no way you did all of that. I mean, I can barely name 200 women I've talked to in the past month, let alone bang 20,000 women throughout the span of 41 years. That's just insane. Like, I guarantee you there's at least 10,000 of those women he probably didn't even know their first name, so this dude is just a straight up freak. I know there had to be some mornings where it was hard for him to wake up and take a piss. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's just have it be known that Wilt Chamberlain put up ridiculous stats, and he always fell off in the postseason, and in general, it's easy to say that he's a fraud. He's a choker in the playoffs when it matters the most, and a lot of people don't know that, which leads me to believe confidently that Bill Russell clears him as a player when it really comes down to it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'm happy to catch y'all later. That's 'cause I don't care when he come in, but he can't lose it. Oh, she tryna make love, I'm tryna make movies. Wait.